The Amazing Spider-Man's Peter Parker is nothing short of a modern-day loser. Yeah, that's right. I'm calling Peter Parker a modern-day loser. So original. Well, I mean, he kinda is, but he's also extremely faithful to the source material. Peter has always been the target of bullying and just this sort of animosity from his classmates. And of course, this also extends to his female classmates. He's never been particularly lucky in that aspect in high school.
Cool. Can you take pictures of my boyfriend's car? I really want to frame a good one for his birthday.
That's really nice of you. Wow, that's such a nice thought. Yeah, I'll look at the old schedule.
Okay.
Peter was often regarded as a sort of wallflower and almost like a creep from the rest of his classmates, mainly because he just kind of kept to himself and was more focused on his own science experiments. Like,
Picture. Put him down! Eugene!
something Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker often is regarded with is that he isn't Spider-Man enough. He's not nerdy enough to be Peter Parker.
Still not taking the picture! Stay down, Parker!
I would personally argue he's far closer to what Peter Parker was in the original run of Amazing Spider-Man and in the original Amazing Fantasy. A sort of angry loner who would rather take pictures of women from afar than try and approach them, because the times he did try approaching them, he's simply regarded as nothing but a wallflower or an afterthought, especially in the original Amazing Fantasy.
I thought that was great, what you did out there. It was stupid, but it was great. You should probably go to the nurse. You might have a concussion. What's your name?
You don't know my name.
Hell, Peter even has a fairly decent home life with his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben, despite his parents being missing. Much more reminiscent of, well, the original comics, in which he seems to be beloved by his Uncle Ben in particular. But the Amazing Spider-Man also happens to take his fair share of liberties, such as his father working at Oscorp and almost his undying need to find his father and to understand what he did. It's so bad, in fact, he decides it's a brilliant idea to sneak into Oscorp by taking somebody else's badge.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing here?
I work here. I don't work here. I was gonna say I work here, but it seems like you in fact do work here, so you know that I don't in fact work here.
You found...
But I also think it's a great way to sort of tie in how Spider-Man receives his powers. I was never personally this big fan of the way they did it in Amazing Fantasy, and I find it a lot more interesting that he was going to Oscorp and sort of exploring around a place he wasn't supposed to, in which he was able to be gifted these spider abilities that he would become so famous for in the near future. Especially because it felt a little less contrived and a little bit less like, oh, just radiation magic, but again, the limitations of the 1960s. I also really enjoyed, particularly in this movie, Spider-Man's characterization. He feels more like a person. As much as I love Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, I find the way that he handles his powers, the way he deals with them, and how he sort of has to grapple with the fact that he's not just Peter anymore. He's something different, is far more fleshed out in this, and I find that far more enjoyable, especially if we're going to stick with this whole Spider-Man in high school shtick. Now, in the 1960s comics, he obviously finds out his powers in a far, far different way. But it's sort of the same when he receives his powers, in the way he sort of uses them at first. He's very self-motivated and self-driven. He wants to embarrass the bully that's been embarrassing him every single day of high school, Flash Thompson. And well, he sure as hell succeeds in that motive. Peter has always had this sort of issue with when it came to using his powers and how to sort of appropriately use them. It's almost like he has two ideologies fighting in his mind. And they're all spurred on by the words of Uncle Ben, his wise "with great power comes great responsibility" speech, which, oddly enough, didn't even happen until the 2002 Ultimate Spider-Man comic books sort of came around. Uncle Ben was really relegated to only the first issue of the original run and almost never heard from again. Peter had landed a job at Oscorp because he had went out of his way to find Dr. Connors and sort of reveal that he was his father's son. And so with this job, he's so obsessed with finding his father, he seems to forget about the responsibilities that he has, particularly to take care of his Aunt May, whom Uncle Ben asked to walk home after his little stunt at high school.
You owe your aunt an apology. Big time. Be a man, get in there and apologize.
I'm sorry, Aunt May.
Honestly, you don't.
But Peter's more angry than he is sorry, and him and Uncle Ben definitely butt heads a lot more in this, which leads to Peter running out of the house, leaving, and ultimately making his life-defining decision to let the robber go because it's not his problem. Not his problem. In Amazing Fantasy, Peter was this big-time wrestler making big-time show money and had no regard for what the police wanted or what other armed men wanted, and so he let the person go. But unfortunately, sometimes inaction has as much consequence as action.
Uncle Ben, Uncle Ben. Oh God, oh my God. Someone call an ambulance! Call an ambulance!
In that moment, Peter had made his life-defining mistake, and he was set down a path of becoming something greater. But we all don't start from a place of being great after immediate tragedy. Peter is angry, he's scared, he's upset, he doesn't know how he's gonna pay for Aunt May's bills, and he really doesn't want to take shit from Flash today. But the main difference this Peter has is he has Gwen, he has someone to confide in and to be with. But ultimately, that doesn't really stop him much. And Peter just decides to go after whoever he deems guilty, whoever looks like the man who hurt his uncle, because for him, he's more caring about vengeance and revenge. He's not Spider-Man, he's simply just a man in a mask, looking to make up for that hole he has in his heart. And that's something the early issues of the 1960s comics covered extremely well. Hell, even when he does finally get the idea to make his costume, he only does so in the event that he doesn't get captured by the police. Now, the way in which they show in this movie him making his gear, I always found very interesting. I personally was a fan of the web-mounted wristwatchers being made from a watch, and unpopular opinion, I actually really enjoy the Amazing Spider-Man 1's costume. I think it looks amazing, but side tangent over, Peter still isn't about responsibility or even helping people. He just wants to hurt others. And that's no more evident than in this scene right here.
Come on, let me go! Stop!
In Spider-Man's original run, he was definitely more about finding new and creative ways to embarrass the criminals he took down and to sort of make it humorous. But he was not really a hero. He's a vigilante, and that's also reflected in the ways in which he's viewed by the NYPD and by the greater of New York at large. He's viewed as a criminal to be persecuted and to sort of be taken in by the law. But Peter doesn't exactly understand this yet. He believes he's out there doing good because in his mind, his good is narrowed down in a vision of revenge to sort of take action for what Uncle Ben had suffered. But it was with a conversation with Captain Stacy that I believe really opened Peter's eyes.
Oh, you're what, Dad?
Howard.
I think he stands for what you stand for, sir. Protecting innocent people from bad guys.
I stand for law and order, son. That's what I stand for, okay? I wear a badge. This guy wears a mask like an outlaw. He's hunting down a bunch of criminals that all look the same, like he's got some sort of personal vendetta. But he's not protecting innocent people, Mr. Parker.
Let's get some air, Peter.
Now, I don't really want to beat on a dead horse with this next point, but I also think that the romance between Gwen and Peter in this movie was extremely well done. But I feel like everybody else has already said this before, so let's move on to the next important part of this video, which is the bridge scene, where I believe Peter truly becomes Spider-Man. He was there originally just so he could have a scrap with the Lizard and sort of deal with the next freak in town, because he wanted to try and do something different. But in turn, he ends up saving a lot of people. This is the first time in the movie where Peter makes the active decision to go out and save people. He has a choice between going after the Lizard and going out and saving somebody's child. And that's something that really weighed heavily on the Peter in the original Amazing comics. He felt this sense of responsibility, not immediately, but it took him 2 or 3 issues to understand what being Spider-Man really meant. And what being Spider-Man is helping other people. You see, Peter Parker is a loser, right? He doesn't get well with girls, he doesn't have the greatest luck in school or with bullies, but Spider-Man is a hero. He's a symbol for something greater, something better. And I believe the scene in this movie where he hands his mask over and saves that child personifies that.
My son, my son. Who are you?
The Amazing Spider-Man also decided to tackle the villain, the Lizard, as Spider-Man's first villain. He was very early on in Spider-Man's original comic run. As a matter of fact, he appeared, I believe, in issue 7. And, well, I believe he's fairly well done. There were a lot of scenes cut from this movie that could have made his characterization better. Now, Peter, also, after getting beaten up by the Lizard in the sewers, is having an almost crisis of faith. He doesn't really believe he's making a difference or that he could take down somebody like the Lizard. And that's where his rock comes into place. In the comics, Peter doesn't have a rock, but he just has this innate sense that he has to do good, a realization that he has these powers and he needs to do something better with them. And well, Peter tries again at the school and gives us one of the best Stan Lee cameos I think I've personally ever seen, while also getting his ass beat by the Lizard for the second time in this movie. Peter has been Spider-Man by the time we get to the 3rd act for all of about a week tops, and he's public enemy number 1 still, even as he tries to save the city. But what it takes is revealing his identity, like in every single Spider-Man movie finale, to sort of get Captain Stacy to get off his back and give him a chance to save the city. But he's been shot, and there's no chance in hell he's going to make it to Oscorp in time. But that's where the second part of being Spider-Man comes in. He slowly started to win over the hearts of the people around New York by putting away villains and sort of doing the right thing. And so New York repaid him, creating him a tunnel system so that he could get to Oscorp in time to be able to stop the Lizard from turning everybody else in the world into lizards and, quote, curing them, as the Lizard said. Yeah, that's dumb. And while I don't think the Lizard's motivation is very well fleshed out and a lot of the deleted scenes could have helped that, I also think this last battle looks extremely good, especially for being made in 2012. And Peter really does struggle to fight the Lizard. It feels like he's struggling to save the day, and it takes the help of Captain Stacy and Gwen Stacy in order for him to be able to send this cure out to save New York. But not just New York, he wanted to save Dr. Connors. He valued Dr. Connors' life above everything else. He viewed him as a flawed family man who just wanted to heal the world, much like how Spider-Man viewed him in the early comics. I mean, even from his first issue that the Lizard appeared, Spider-Man was more focused on curing him and protecting his name than doing anything else. But at the end of every single battle, there's always a sacrifice that must be made. And in this movie, it happens to be Captain Stacy. And Captain Stacy asks in his dying breath for Peter to make him a promise to stay away from Gwen.
Don't make promises you can't keep, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, but those are the best kind.
Okay, class, open your books. Let's begin on page 1.
Something I believe modern comic books are truly missing with Peter is his life is miserable and he's a loser, but that he also has something to look forward to at the end of the day. Whether it's this goofy interaction with Betty Brant that's highly dated, in my opinion, or it's having a loving wife and MJ waiting at home. He just needs to get a win sometimes.
Peter, I know things have been difficult lately, and I'm sorry about that. I think I know what you're feeling. Ever since you were a little boy, you've been living with so many unresolved things. Well, take it from an old man. Those things send us down a road. They make us who we are. And if anyone's destined for greatness, it's you, son. You owe the world your gifts. You just have to figure out how to use them. And know that wherever they take you, we'll always be here. So come on home, Peter. You're my hero. And I love you.
So I just want to take a little bit to thank everybody for watching. I mean, at the time of recording this, I just hit 500 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing and not something I had really expected to get to. And so I'm very thankful for all of you that stick around and watch. And, you know, if you want to see my content early, I have a Patreon in the description if you'd like to support me and sort of support my journey as a creator. If not, that's completely fine. And I just want to say, have a nice day.